Welcome to Byte-Sized Agency Briefs, a webinar series that packs a ton of important agency information on one topic from one expert into a 25-minute brief. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. This is Byte-Sized Agency Briefs. I'm your host, Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the agency of their dreams. Today, I'm really excited to be speaking with Kelly Berrk. She's a brand strategist who works with agencies and brands that operate in the health, wellness, and lifestyle markets. She leverages her background leading marketing and communication teams at PR agencies, tech startups, and lifestyle brands in combination with her functional movement, which gets me really excited. Her functional movement expertise through disciplines of yoga and Pilates and body work to inform the way that she approaches developing brands. So there's a really unique approach. And welcome. Thank you for being here with me all the way from
Thanks for having me. Yes.
The internet brings us right next to each other.
The internet brings us together. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
So, no, the pleasure's mine. I'm excited to dig into kind of brand strategy from a whole other perspective. And I think that the way that I described it in the intro doesn't do it any justice, but, I talk about what your background is. And I know it includes a zillion yoga certifications, but also that's not what you do for work.
A zillion. Yes.
So how do you marry the two? And a zillion. Talk to me about your background and what got you into brand strategy.
Maybe we can do a little brand strategy for my brand. I feel like it's always hardest to see yourself objectively. That's a really good question, because I think for a long time I had two very separate identities. There was the yoga version of Kelly, and then there was the brand strategist, professional version of Kelly. And for a while, I struggled to find how the two met and how it would be relevant for, either type of client. But what I found, definitely through a lot of my yoga studies and all the trainings and different teachers that I've worked with and different disciplines, I really got into Pilates pretty heavily just for the focus on anatomy and understanding how the body works and understanding how components and things go together. And then I started to see that a lot of the way in which I showed up in both areas and in both disciplines, in yoga and in branding, was very similar. And I think that that's just true for everybody, right? we're not these compartmentalized beings. We are multifaceted. We have different interests, we have different disciplines, and your brain and your body doesn't know oh, I'm not going to use the yoga part of my brain today. I'm only going to use the brand strategy part of my brain. It's just, it's all connected. I think, for me, that was the aha moment, for myself, was understanding that oh, wow, not only do they not have to be separate, but that they shouldn't be, that there should be a connection and there should be a link, and that actually enhances both of what I'm doing. So to answer your question, my background was, I worked in as a marketing generalist for a while. I started at tech startups. Before that, I was in PR. I was definitely on that corporate track. And I feel my story is probably cliched, every yoga teacher, where it's you face burnout and you go to the extreme and you realize that your life doesn't have a whole lot of balance. But this is the wonderful thing about life, I think, is that whenever we meet a struggle or a challenge or there's a barrier, it's an opportunity instead of, which, I do it too. We all do it, right? You look at the frustration and you think, oh my gosh, and you can keep trying it that way, or you can try a different avenue and see where it takes you. And that's kind of what happened to me, is that I started to take the avenue towards yoga, and I didn't think I was going to teach. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to know more. We talked about this too, like before, of just like the enthusiasm and this excitement of like, oh my gosh, like I can feel this in my body. I can, get very specific and very granular, and it's very empowering. I feel like I might be going off-roading, so you might have to like bring me back to like the thread. Otherwise, I'll just keep rambling. But
I'm not reeling anything in. We're just going with it.
Okay. So just keep going.
The burnout that you felt, the burnout that you felt that resulted in some change requires a lot of courage to identify that I'm burned out, that I'm doing something that's not meaningful to me, that I need something different. Like, what was that identification, acceptance process, like channeling your inner courage to be like, I need to do something different? And like, even now you're in Paris, right? You packed up all your stuff, put it in storage, and like, where do you channel all that courage from?
It's crazy. Actually, that's a perfect word. In France, they say courage, and it's like this like steeliness, this kind of like inner like gut of like, like pull yourself like and like put it out there. I guess like maybe the more American equivalent of that would just be like, like fight for it, like pull yourself up and put yourself out there. And I think that's something that I've always done. And I always like have sought change because I like the opportunity that comes with it. I like growth. I like learning new things. I don't like being uncomfortable. Nobody likes being uncomfortable, but I like putting myself in uncomfortable situations because you learn so much about yourself. And also from a work perspective, I mean, the creative stimulus like is like huge. Like the return is great. I think a lot of times, like, yes, it does take courage to not stay in something that's known, even if it's not what you want. But I think sometimes there's also like no choice but other than to move forward. It's like you could keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and you're going to get the same result. And if you're unsatisfied in your work or in your life, there's not one thing that's going to like, oh yeah, like I'll figure it out tomorrow, and then it's just going to miraculously like be amazing. It's a constant process, I think, of like reevaluating. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, where I got like burnt out was I invested so much, like whenever I'm into like a subject matter, something that I'm learning, working with a client, if I'm enthused about it, like I'm all in. Like I want to learn everything there is to learn about it. Like I want to find ways that I can like connect the dots and things that don't seem like immediately obvious. But I have to watch myself because sometimes I pour too much into an area and I'm not taking care of the rest. And, I think that it was an opportunity, I'm grateful that it happened, even though at the time it was not so great.
Well, sure. And that's like the phrase of like, the growth is on the other side of the challenge, or like, being on the edge of my comfort zone is where, like, as I'm getting discomfort through going through something, that's where the growth is, outside of our comfort zones. And you talking about like caring so much that like it burns you out, totally not on tone, but it reminds me of like, Michael Scott from The Office saying, "Whoa, one of my weaknesses is that I care too much," and it can be a detriment because when we pour too much of ourselves in, like then it robs from other areas of our lives, and if we're not balanced, like forget about work, but like how good is the work going to be, or how well am I showing up in other areas of my life when I'm burning myself out in something that I really do care a lot about? And you talk about like brand therapy as part of your process for brand strategy in bringing it kind of all together. I mean, is that where that kind of comes from, is the balance of self and connection with others? And I mean, not feed you words, but like where does the brand therapy idea come from in your process?
I think it comes from that. I think just kind of to respond to what you just said, but anything like in life, like especially in like work, if it's like if you're pouring like too much at it, like or trying to make it be something, like it constrains it. Just like, anything, it needs to kind of have room to breathe. In the same way that like, I do a lot of copywriting work as well. And like sometimes it's like, I'm trying to come up with this like amazing, like creative, I do lifestyle copy. So it's all about like putting yourself in this experience and like giving people this like imagination and like this sense of like, being, and like you can't be inspired if you're forcing and pushing something. And I think that that's the same way for, branding in general, and how I came to being more of a brand strategist than a marketing generalist. Like that to me was like putting together like the pieces and like connecting the dots of like, that is what good branding, good marketing is being able to understand like what it is you are trying to say, and why, your purpose, like the thing that is inspired, like that has some sort of depth or meaning to it. But it's, best conveyed in a story. People are not really, I mean, there's lots of different like options and things to like, purchase. There's lots of different products. There's lots of different services. There's lots of things that are the same. What makes, a person or a brand different? It's their unique essence. So like, I think of like branding, like when I think of like creating a brand, I think of creating like a personality, like you would like a person, like you meet them at a party, like what's the vibe? Like, what do they wear? Like, what words are they using? What are they interested in? Like if you think about it in the terms of like, brand, like therapy, it's essentially like, what are you talking about when you feel like most safe and like most vulnerable? Not trying to say that like I try to like put all my clients in therapy. I don't know if I said that, I might not have any clients, but I think that the way in which I work that's different and really connects with the people and the brands that I work with is because I'm just talking to people. I'm having a conversation, like we're having a conversation, and it's not, I know the formula. I know what the marketing way to construct a positioning statement and messaging. And I know all the pieces that make that into something that's like a packaged marketing actionable thing. But you're going to get the real good information by exploring, right? By having a conversation and really connecting with another person. I don't know if I answered the question, but I think that that's what it's about. I think that it's about finding like, what is that connecting thread? And it's also true of anything, like in relationships in general. Like if you find the thing that someone's interested in and you find a way to also connect, empathize, relate, bridge that gap, then there's an opening. I mean, I'm finding that even here, like, in Paris, like I don't speak French yet. I'm taking French lessons. Just say I try. But I think that it's about like connecting on the things, that the commonalities that you have, and being curious and listening. I mean, I talk a lot, I know, but I think it's about listening more, and listening, like active listening, not like waiting to insert,
Yeah. You said something that's pretty interesting that doesn't even make me think about, well, I was going to say it doesn't make me really connect it with a brand, but the more I think about it, the more that's not entirely true. But like you're talking about brands being able to be like a safe place for consumers, or feel safe with for consumers to feel safe with a brand, whether it's, B2B, B2C, none of that really matters. It's right. my relationship to a service or a device or a product or a location or an experience or whatever. And so how am I connecting on an emotional level? And so that's the essence of what branding is. But the way that you're breaking it down is so much more like emotionally intelligent than let me develop your mission, vision, values for you. And Do you know what I mean? And to me,
I
that's
love
an
that.
interesting
I'm
way of
actually going
framing
to steal that.
it. Go for
I
it.
feel like that's good positioning for me. Emotional intelligence. I like that. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll admit it. Like, I've been in a relationship with somebody that's just a magical gift in my life, and we've been together for about 3 years, 3.5 years, and it's probably one of the first relationships where I realized that safety is one of the most important parts of what's needed in the relationship. I never knew that before. Like
Wow.
that's so
Wow.
vital for a
Yeah.
relationship. And so to think about my emotional intelligence has like I'm like genius Mensa level this year on what I've learned about my emotional intelligence, to be
Amazing.
humble about it. But to tie that to a brand and a brand strategy process, to me, just on a whole other level, I think that's really, really magical. And the
Oh,
results have got to be that much more powerful for the brands that you're working with, because it's
I
connecting
think
with people
so.
on. Yeah.
Thank you.
What do you,
Yeah,
how do you describe
I
like,
love the way you put it. I feel like that's a much better way to describe it. I, I feel like I've been describing it like more through like example, like people don't like nobody wants to be like buy this now. It doesn't feel good. And also I don't want to buy something I don't need. Like and that doesn't feel good. And I I'm very fortunate that I feel like I'm finally at a place in my career now where I can pick and choose my clients. And that was not always that way. I'm grateful for every experience that I had because it's like you learn so much, even through the things that are not the right fit, right? But
Yep.
I'm really excited when I'm working with a company or a brand or an entrepreneur that, is doing something like I'm passionate about, like things in the health and the wellness and like, lifestyle, like healthy lifestyle, like space. So thinking about like, oh, wow, like this is something that like that people want and that people like need and that people are seeking. The only problem is that they just don't know about it yet. So it changes the whole dynamic because then it's not just like, I'm the company that's trying to like make you buy something and it's, I'm an American, like, but like sometimes like consumerism is just like, it's like, but I think that's the key is like figuring out like, what is it that you're really like, that you're really about and that you're really committed to and that you're really offering. And then it's just about like communicating it in a way that the people that want it can hear what you're saying, so like the emotional intelligence about it is like, I do a lot of like customer profiling. So, and that's not like, oh, they're, male or female and like they're this age group. That's just so simplistic. I care much more about like, what do you think about? Like, what gets you excited? What keeps you up at night? Like, what does your day look like? Like what would be like your perfect version like of this? Like, what do you wish existed? Like the things that, going back to the conversation of like safety, I've been playing with this a lot too, like in my personal like relationships this year as well, is like, what happens when I am really thoughtful about what I want to say and I've done my work of like processing it and then I communicate like in truth, like what it is I really want or what it is I need or what I'm feeling. And I am allowing myself to be vulnerable, which it's not the easiest thing to do. We know, right? But it allows other people the opportunity, if they want to take it, like an invitation to show up in kind. And I still am surprised by this. Like and that's, I think, what creates the safety. So going back to like creating the safety, I love this because I haven't thought about it in this way. Like you're helping me process stuff like in real time. I love it. But
this is therapy for you too, then.
This is therapy for me. You didn't realize it. You're an agency therapist. No, but I think that that's what it's about. And that's how I want to show up too. Like I have a lot of like skills like related to marketing. And I think sometimes, especially if I think of my friends, or, colleagues in the yoga space, I think sometimes when you're in something that's like, so like, meant to be altruistic, and it's meant to like, we don't care about the money. We're just like here, like for the greater good of humanity. It's like, yeah, but we still have to eat, it's like, it's kind of more of thinking of how can we have like an energy exchange or supporting like one another in a way that's mutually beneficial. And I think that it can be this way if we can be like really honest. And I think people appreciate that. Like it's a sign and show of respect. And I think like, I think that messaging of like, an authentic brand is kind of like phasing out because it's just been so overused. But I think maybe what's coming in, I'm hoping, is that people are starting to say like, maybe like, let's just stop BSing people and like giving them faux facts and figures, and just talk to them like people, and like actually get to know them and figure out what they want and what they need and like what they're about.
Yeah. How does it, it's interesting you talk about like American consumerism and like I always saw marketing as getting people to buy things that we want to sell, whether they want it or not. Yeah. And when I left my last agency role, I said, I never want to sell, and this was a literal statement, I never want to sell commodity plastic cameras on Black Friday again. Like there are things that like, and that's an actual example, but it was like, I just don't want to force things down people's throat. And if I'm going to be on the brand side, if I'm going to be on the agency side, I want to work in a way that is positioning things that people need and social justice causes and things like that, as opposed to, just buy another commodity thing. And it felt icky after, 20 years. So I fully support that. Talk about how, like, what, why, and, we've referenced Simon Sinek in both of our conversations. Like, how does that fit into the framing of what you do with brands and agencies from like the brand therapy standpoint?
Yeah, no, it's a great talk. I feel like I often like send that to my clients, especially if they're like new to branding and like wanting to learn. It's just kind of a nice baseline to begin with. But I find it, I won't say I find it surprising anymore, but it is interesting that a lot of brands and no brands and brands that have gone through, formal branding with branding agencies, a lot of times my first question is like, what are you most excited about? Like what you do? Like, what are you like, why do you do it? Like you could do anything. And that's, that is the truth. Like, I mean, it's not that simple, but sometimes it kind of is, it's like we could do a lot of different things like with our time. Maybe like there's obligations and things that like we have to do in our lives. Like I'm sure we would all just like to enjoy like relaxing on a beach, but that would still probably get boring. You know what I mean? Like you need like some sort of like stimulus. I think that it has to begin there, like to really like question, like, and also, why a certain brand, why you at a certain brand. I, like you, would like to get closer to, I'm like a place in a world where like we could all like really like live our values, I do think that it's possible. Like, I don't know, that could get down a whole other rabbit hole. I don't know if we want to go there, but
no, listen, I get it. I share the same vision of hope that you're talking about. And, you reference like the authenticity of brands kind of feeling like Me Too, we're authentic, but are you really, and it's individual brands. And so it became kind of a trendy thing. So how do you weed out the inauthentic authenticators or whatever? And so, I love the approach, and I love the way that you dig into it.
I think that that's just to add to the question that you'd asked me before, but that's always what I tell, clients when I begin working with them, is like, that's how we're going to create something like sticky for the brand. Because a lot of times, like, people will come to you and say, like, well, I just need this brochure, or I want the website, or, whatever external facing, like, marketing, like, deliverable it is. But, like, you got to think about, like, how you what led you to that. Like, that's why, like, this doesn't happen to me as much anymore, but I remember having, when I had clients that I needed to kind of, like, bring more to my way of thinking, like, it was difficult for them to understand, like, well, why are we going to spend all this time doing positioning? Like, we just need the thing. We just need to sell. We need to make the money. We need to go now. But it's like, well, it ends up being hollow. And then that's where it's like, you end up marketing something that feels like you're pushing something down someone's throat because you haven't done your due diligence. You know what I mean? Like, you haven't done, like, your vetting, like, you haven't thought about, like, your values, your beliefs. So how can you expect someone to be able to see themselves in you when you don't even know who you are? Like, you haven't been able to answer that question. But
yeah, so true. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today from Paris. I'm so grateful for your time and your expertise and your knowledge.
Thanks again for tuning in to Byte-Sized Agency Briefs. As always, if you found value in this episode, chances are someone else will too, so please share it with your network. Also, if you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love, drop me a note. Let's get them on. Finally, find someone to hug today.